Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. I got Wilson from my team here. We're Volition Properties, in case you don't know. And, you know, breaking news. We've got
Yeah.
a new government, a new liberal minority government. And what we wanted to talk about today was kind of what we think those impacts might be on the Toronto housing market, on our investors that invest in that market too. So throw it over to you, Wilson.
Yeah. Liberals are in again for another 4 years. I'll kind of summarize what Mark Carney has committed to doing in the housing market, and then we could get some thoughts from there. So he's committed to doubling the pace of housing construction to 500,000 homes annually, leveraging innovative technologies in public lands. What do you think about that?
It's a big commitment, right? I love to see it happen. There's two things I think that are going to impact the housing market. So one is how quickly this will come to market, and two, how does this relate to the rate of population growth, right? Right now, projections are anywhere, I think it was like from 0.79 to 0.14% annual population growth. And 500,000 homes kind of puts you in the middle of what that population growth trend would be. So it could be enough housing to, I would say, make things more affordable, but prevent things from getting even more expensive. So like that's really going to be that supply and demand thing. That's first, that's in my head. But two, it's a very aggressive plan. I hope it comes true, but it's almost like 1,300 to 1,400 homes a day to build, right? So that's pretty crazy. And obviously, this won't happen anytime soon. That's the other thing I think to keep in mind. If you give a builder a green light today with land already to build on, a builder is going to take about 12 months to actually build the home, assuming land is serviced and everything. So the earliest you can see anything really happening is about 2 years out.
And I think one thing that he did mention was like they'll be leveraging public lands, and I think that is going to be. I mean, he's hinting at government lands, and we'll see if that actually comes to fruition. Sorry, you want to say something?
No, I was
There?
just gonna say, like, both parties had promised both. I know we've got more
Yeah.
than two, but the
Yeah.
two popular parties both promised the use of public lands. The Conservatives were a bit more aggressive, I think, in terms of their timelines. We'll see too where public lands are useful, right? In the GTA, a lot of the green belt is not publicly owned, right? A lot of it's farmland. There is some parkland, but I can tell you that's not going to be the stuff that gets given up. So
Yeah.
it may have limited impact in some of the cities and areas which already have very high housing costs, right? So your Vancouvers, your Torontos, your Montreals.
Okay. The other thing that Mark Carney has put out there is he wants to establish a Build Canada Homes with 25 billion in financing to develop affordable housing and support municipalities to enable homes.
It's a great idea, and I like a lot of the ideas actually from both platforms. I think the difference, kind of between the two is, a Build Canada Home committee, whatever. It's a centralized approach. So, we're looking at a much more top-down approach to pushing building of homes through. And there's pros and cons to having a top-down approach. The conservative approach was the same idea. It's not like these two platforms are that drastically different this time around. Conservatives want to do the same thing, but have a bottom-up approach where they're kind of incentivizing municipalities to do it. So the idea is sound. It's going to come down to execution. And, I as a taxpayer, I'm not thrilled about having another committee, right? It's cost in that. But if it
Yeah.
is effective, then great. So it's really, for me, it's not the idea more than it comes down to the execution.
And I think this kind of leads into the next thing that he proposes is to cut municipal development charges in half for multi-rent housing for 3 years to lower construction costs.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I think it's a great idea, right? Like we've seen in Toronto how effective the removal of red tape has been in incentivizing building. Like if you're watching and you're outside of Toronto or you don't know what's been happening in Toronto, basically a couple of years ago, they lifted development charges on all multifamily development up to 4 units, and they lifted development charges on additional dwelling units, laneway houses, or garden suites. And that has had a big impact on the city. There's a lot of small developers and bigger developers building these fourplexes or 4+1s, as they're often called, to service this missing middle. So it has made a difference. So, if something like this comes along that incentivizes, more density, I think that will be how deep are we talking? Like, are we talking complete waiver of, development charges, or does it end up being a small amount? What actually happens will impact, but it is effective. Like, it is proven in Toronto that doing this is effective. So I am, again, supportive of the idea, caution of the execution of it.
Yeah. And I think, the last thing that he proposed with respect to housing is he wants to reintroduce a tax incentive for rental housing construction to stimulate building of rental units. What do you think of that?
I mean, it was successful in the 70s and 80s. Purpose-built rentals that came through the 70s and 80s because of the tax incentives. So it was effective. So I do think it is an effective thing to bring more rental stock to, areas like the GTA. I think the greater question is that the answer to the housing crisis? Like, can we rent our way out of a housing crisis? And I don't think you can actually do, right? Like, I think adding rental stock, absolutely. Right now, we need everything. We need cheap housing. We need rental housing. We don't need any more $700,000, $800,000 studio condos, but we need pretty much everything else, right? The missing middle, like, we need more of those kind of properties, condominiumized houses. So all these things we need more of, and any tax incentive that helps us. And if this tax incentives, I think it also talked about getting more CMHC lending out as well. Those will make a difference, right? It's been proven earlier on in the 70s and 80s with building of rental housing, and now with the 4+1s, with CMHC support on these for the development of those, like, people's entire business cases are built around deferral of development fees and CMHC financing. Like, you need both. So if these things happen as has been promised, will it be effective? Yes, but it takes time. Remember, these changes in Toronto were made over 2 years ago, and only now we're seeing ground being broken on many of these places, with just a handful completed in the city. So we won't really see the impact. Even if they say go today, we won't see impact for a good 2-3 years.
Yeah, okay, that's all I have.
The plans are more similar than they were dissimilar. I think that everybody understands that the need for more housing is critical. We're in a housing crisis. So I don't think that if either government came in, quite honestly, I think the impact would be very similar to our housing market. So we shall see. It comes down to execution now.
We dug ourselves into this deep pit, so we'll see how we get out, whichever government is in place. Let's end it there.
Thanks for following. Thanks for tuning in. We'll have more insights and opinions on political changes, non-political changes on our social media. So please continue to follow us.